Who watches it? Anyone who's absent. All right, percents and fractions. You've already done fractions. We've been doing fractions forever. Rates, ratios, all fractions, right? Yesterday we did a review of decimals to fractions, fractions to decimals. Same idea, except for we're not doing decimals today, we're doing percents. So you already know a fraction is part of something. It's part of a piece. But what is a percent? A percent is a ratio. Okay, we've done ratios. You know what those are? Comparing two numbers. Okay, remember like boys to girls, like 4 boys to 5 girls, or 3 circles to 4 triangles. Okay, comparing two numbers, but it's comparing, a percent is comparing one number to 100. So it is comparing two numbers. A percent does compare two numbers, but one of those numbers is always 100. And the reason it's always 100 is because 100% means complete, the full thing. If you completed 100% of your homework, you did all of your homework. If you got 100% on a test, you got every single question right. So our fractions are going to be out of 100. A percent is a ratio out of 100. For example, if I have a 45%, hopefully you've seen this percent sign before, maybe on a test returned to you, maybe on your Infinite Campus where it shows your grades. I hope you're not seeing the number 45 next to your grade, though, because that would be really bad. But I think you've seen this percent sign before. 45%. Really what we're saying is it's 45 out of 100, or 45 to 100. We're comparing the number 45 to 100. So writing a percent as a fraction. So if I have 50%, I want to write this as a fraction and of course put it in simplest form like we do all our fractions. So 50%, it means we want 50 out of 100, or we have 50 out of 100 because all percents are out of 100. So to write this as a fraction, there's really only two steps, and the first one is the only new step. The first step is the percent is going to be your numerator and 100 your denominator every single time. The total it is out of is 100, so that's your denominator every single time. Write all that down. So if I have 50%, the 50% becomes my numerator, and 100 is always going to be my denominator. Okay, ready to move on? Looks like about everybody's done writing. So our first step, take that percent, put it over 100. We've got the fraction of 50 over 100. Step 2 is a step that we have done over and over since we started doing fractions. Simplify. I know, we hate it, but we got to do it. Okay, so step 2 isn't really anything new, but you still need to do it. So to simplify, you know you have to divide by the GCF, the greatest common factor. Now, for my lazy people that don't like to list out the factors, or the people that don't know their multiplication tables and can't find the greatest common factor, you could pick any factor you want. You just might have to simplify more than one time. You might have to divide more than once. If you choose the greatest common factor, we can do this in one problem, one division problem. So, greatest common factor, I will give it to you. It is 50. Excellent. So we're going to divide the top and the bottom by 50 to simplify this answer. 50 divided by 50 is 1, and 100 divided by 50 is 2. So 50 over 100 in simplest form is 1/2. I've mentioned this shortcut before. I will remind you again. Anytime you have a fraction where the numerator is half the size of the denominator, it's going to simplify to 1/2 no matter what. Anytime the numerator is half the size of the denominator, it simplifies to 1/2. 3 over 6, 1/2. 5 over 10, 1/2. 30 over 60, 1/2. Okay, so there's a shortcut for you if you see one that the numerator is half the size of the denominator. All right, that's it for how the directions, just 2 steps. Let's do a practice problem. What fraction is 55%? So we have 55% here. You know the denominator has to be what? 100. So without even knowing the percent, you really could have already written 100, your denominator. And then our percent, our 55%, just becomes the numerator. Yeah, it just becomes the top number. Take away that percent sign and put it on top of 100. 55 over 100. Now, while that was super easy, we technically are not done. Okay, yeah, we got to simplify. So again, we're going to take 55 over 100 and divide by our GCF. If you know it, good for you. If you don't, well, we can list out the factors, or if you just want to pick a number that easily goes into 55 and 100, we can divide by that, and hopefully that will be the right one. What does, very quickly, you can look at 55 and 100, what goes into 55 and 100 every time? Yeah, 5, right? It ends in a 5, ends in a 0. It goes divisible by 5. So let's divide by 5. It actually happens that 5 is the GCF. So makes it easy for us. Top divided by 5, bottom divided by 5. We end up with 11 over, yes, 11 over 20. So 55% is 11 over 20. Pretty easy? Okay, now we're going to go the other way. We're going to go fraction. 2%, yeah. Okay. I think a few people are still writing this down. I don't want to skip just yet. We good? Oh, still see some pencils moving still, so I won't go yet. Okay, so now we're going to change gears and go the other direction. Fractions as percents. So we want to write 6/8 as a percent. 6 over 8 needs to become a percent. Well, you guys know already from the first part of this lesson that a percent fraction has to have what as the denominator? It has to have 100, right? What's the denominator we have here? 8. So my question is, can we go from 8 to 100? Okay. We've done this exact same process. We did it with ratio tables. We did it with equivalent ratios. And it was one of the methods we did yesterday, converting a fraction to a decimal. You have to find an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. So step 1 is, if the denominator is not a factor of 100, then we have to simplify the fraction. Remember those ratio tables? You actually had one on your test. We couldn't go from the first box to the last box because the denominators were not equivalent fractions. They wasn't a factor of each other. So we had to simplify first. Go backwards to go forward, right? So we're going to simplify 6/8. We're going to put it in simplest form by dividing by the greatest common factor. You should all be able to see this one easily because 6 and 8 are small numbers. The greatest common factor of 6 and 8 is, so we're going to divide by 2. Whatever we do to the top, we do to the bottom. We end up with 3/4, right? 6 divided by 2 and 8 divided by 2, 3/4. So far, nothing new. Simplify. Step 2. Anyone need me to go back? Did I go too quick? Sorry, I see pencils going. Sorry, let me go back. I won't rush you. Okay? All right, so then step 2 is write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. Now, if we already had a fraction that had a factor of 100, we wouldn't have to simplify. But in this case, we had to simplify. And we ended up with 3/4, right? So now step 2 says all we have to do is make another fraction that has 100 as the denominator. So we have to have an equivalent fraction, and we have to go from 4 to 100. And whatever we did to 4 to get to 100, we're going to do the same to the top, right? Equivalent fraction. So what do you do? There's a lot of do's. What do you do? Do you do? What do you do? Just sounded weird. What do you have to do to 4 in order to get the answer of 100? Multiply by 25. If you didn't know your 25 times tables, you should at least know quarters and money. 4 quarters is $1, right? So times 25. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the, exactly. So we're going to do 3 times 25. 3/4 is worth 75. So we have this fraction of 75 over 100. We are not done. Don't say simplify. Look, it's already simplified right here. 3/4 is simplified. We're not going to go to a new fraction and then go backwards. We only simplify if the answer we want is a fraction. We don't want a fraction as our final answer. We want a percent. So the object here was to make a new fraction that had 100 as a denominator, which we have, and we've got this 75 as our numerator, which brings us to step 3. The numerator is your answer. The numerator is the percent. So I have 75 over 100, or 75 out of 100. So that 75 is my percent. 75%. So 6/8, or 6 out of 8, is the same as 75%. If I gave you a quiz with 8 questions and you got 2 wrong, you got 6 out of 8 correct, you would end up with a 75%. Yes? And that's the example I just gave you, right? If you got 6 out of 8 questions, you got a 75%. All right, let's do one more. And then if I need to go back, I know I kind of went fast on that one, so if someone needs more, I can go back and show you those after. But let's go ahead and finish first. So we have this. You do not have to write this down. This is just what form you will see on your quizzes or your homework. Okay. Mitch made 12 out of 40 shots during the championship game. What percent of his shots did Mitch make? So how many shots did he make total? Sorry, let me rephrase it. How many shots did he try total? 40. Okay. So 40 is Mitch's total. And we know that on a percent, 100 is the total. And since 100 goes on the bottom, Mitch's total needs to go on the bottom. Right after he crosses over, shoots, dunks, yay. Oh, you missed it. You weren't looking. You missed Mitch. You missed Mitch. Bummer. All right. That was Mitch. All right, so back to the fraction part. We're going to put the on the bottom, and we're going to put how many he made on the top. Total tries on the bottom because the total amount of a percent is on the bottom, which is 100. And then we have to make an equivalent fraction out of 100, right? So my question is, how do you go from 40 to 100? What do we need to do to 40 to get 100? Yeah, I'm hearing a bunch of different answers, but they're all meaning the same thing, and that is you cannot go from 40 to 100. It's not possible. There's no multiplication you can do that says 40 times whatever gets you 100. So we're going to simplify. We're going to simplify 12/40ths. Okay? And we're going to divide by the GCF. I know you should know how to do this, but I've been giving you a lot of the GCFs for free these last few notes. So let's do the GCF on this together. Let's actually do this one. 12. My factors are 1, 2. Is 3 a factor? Is 4? 4 times what? So that's my inside rainbow, which means 2 times and 1 times. There's my factors of 12. Let's do 40. Obviously, 1 is 2. Yeah, because it's even, right? 3? No. 4? 5? 6? 7? 7? No. 8? 8 times what? There's your inside rainbow. 4 times, 2 times, and 1 times. What is the largest number that's in both lists? All right. So our greatest common factor is 4. All the factors of 12 and all the factors of 40, we ended up with 4 being the biggest number they share. Which means we're going to divide by 4. Divide the top, divide the bottom, both divide by 4. Okay. 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 40 divided by 4 is 10. So now we have our simplest form fraction. But this does not give us Mitch's shooting percent. It just gives us a fraction. But that fraction can easily turn into something over 100. Because we can very easily go from 10 to 100 by multiplying by, if If we multiply the bottom by 10, what are we going to do to the 3 on top? 3. I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I would like you to only answer the question I am asking you. And at this point, that's 3 times 10. Thank you. Now, we are not simplifying because I'm not asking for a fraction. I'm asking for a percent. So take that numerator and write what right next to it? The percent. So 30 over 100 is really just 30%. That'd be a bad grade. That's not very good shooting either. All right. How are we feeling? It's easy?